Well, I think the effect of the Trump China policy to date is to create a lot of turbulence and a lot of unpredictability. There's a lot of question about what is a negotiating tactic and what is actually a long-term strategic vision by the United States as to how it needs to interact with China.
Well,
So it's very difficult.
well, given that you've had a turn in the USTR, what do you think of the negotiating stance so far from the United States? Has it been effective?
Well, I think the Trump administration deserves a lot of credit for having disrupted the status quo, and they certainly have gotten China's attention. I think the difficult question is whether the United States has a coherent strategic approach to what it is that it wants from China and what it is that it realistically can get. Because even though the United States and China have a lot of interconnections in their economy, frankly, the economists tell us that the economies are not so interlinked that they can't tolerate these tariffs. If you blocked every single product that currently comes from China to the United States, the effect on China's economy apparently is not more than about 3 percentage points in terms of its GDP. So this is not a systemic threat to China. And that means that the United States needs to make its negotiations commensurately realistic.
And from the U.S. side, then, let's look at some of the impacts we've already seen, more in the markets, but still some concerns here around transports. We saw overnight Harley-Davidson now having to tweak production. The automakers, a report from Moody's saying that these steps could hurt automakers. Do you think there is a risk here that the administration is going to harm the very industries it is setting out to protect?
Well, we're reading a lot in the press that the Republicans on Capitol Hill are actually very concerned about this. And, you know, this is the group that theoretically would be aligned with Trump. So I think your point is well taken, and there's a lot of concern. Also, China's potential to retaliate against any tariffs that the United States puts on, I think, is very real. I think Xi Jinping indicated today that if the United States slaps China on the face, that China will punch back. So I think we are looking at some significant potential damage to the industries that are reliant on trade.
And Claire, you said yourself the U.S. has to be clear about what it wants out of this current trade fight. The message we're getting from the White House, whether it's Peter Navarro overnight or recent comments from President Trump himself, is that they want to protect technology. They want to go after those IP transfers that have arguably been a problem for businesses for quite some time. But is going after tariffs the way to do that?
Well, that's the significant question. So I think as a short-term attention getting, we must change the dynamic. China, you need to understand that we really are having difficulties with what you are doing with your industrial policies and with the IP theft and with your closing your own market and then potentially dumping excess production on global markets. That something really fundamental has to change there because you, China, are too big an economy and having too much of an impact on global markets for the world to ignore that. So that basic point, I think, is very, very valuable. But the question is, since after you get their attention, what is it that you can do to change the underlying problems? And I think the issue is really that tariffs in the long term are going to disrupt global trade. So is there some short-term opportunity for both sides to absorb the punches in the nose and then perhaps get together for a more realistic assessment of how you can make the global trading system work?
Hey,
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.